right, guys, welcome back. Today, I want to talk all about arugula. There's a few ways and systems that I like to grow arugula that is quite a bit different than what maybe you're used to seeing. But I want to explain kind of why I grow arugula the way I do, and then some of the problems that I've encountered in my climate and what I've done to overcome them. When I first started growing arugula 14 years ago or so, I was told by someone who'd been growing arugula for a while that arugula was a light feeder. And I've since have come to, at least my experience, that arugula is more on the heavier feeder than what I've been told. Especially in the summertime, because we do grow arugula 52 weeks a year. We have big demand for it in the summertime. When it comes to growing arugula in the summertime, because of the stress, I have found from experience that arugula takes more nutrients to grow than it does in the fall, winter, and spring. So the first thing that I really want to address is fertility. I like to do soil test, and then from that soil test, I get a custom blend nutrient mix with compost that I apply on the bare soil before I plant. And so addressing fertility is the most important thing that I found to being successful at growing arugula, especially if you want to pull it off in the summertime. In the fall and the spring, really because there's a lot less environmental stress on the plant and the crop, there's a lot less problems that I have, so there's a lot more forgiveness. So if I just wanted to grow arugula in the spring or the fall and not worry about summer or the winter, then, that saying that arugula is life feeder is mostly true. But because I want to have this crop consistently every single week of the year, I definitely have to really be a lot more aware of my soil fertility to really pull this off well. Last week was in the hundreds, and we would have already have seen some stress, either stunted growth or discoloration, if I hadn't addressed fertility. So that's number one. The second problem that I've had with arugula is flea beetles. Oh my goodness. The battle that I've had with those guys has been pretty intense. Because we are a certified organic farm, we can't just nuke our crops with all the chemicals that are available to guaranteed kill flea beetles. Probably a bigger challenge is really managing flea beetles. I've trialed insect netting, and even though insect netting does keep flea beetles at bay, I found around, I think the last time I trialed this, it was like a 20% reduction in yield. There's less airflow, and because there's another added layer of material over that, it's just not getting the airflow and the light it needs to really get that solid growth. Also, when I did insect netting, I found that the leaves were more stretched, and so I just didn't like how the texture was. I didn't like how thin the leaves were compared to growing without insect netting. I know several growers who grow further up north have tremendous success, but whatever reason in my climate, in my side-by-side trials of growing arugula with netting and without, the crop grown without netting was a far superior product and a much higher yield. One of the things I've had really good success with managing flea beetles is beneficial nematodes. And that can be applied on the surface of the soil. I've injected them through my fertigation system, but that really does a good job on helping control some of that flea beetles. This past year or two, the flea beetles have not been bad. So I think we've been just managing with crop rotation and, just keeping our beds clean, really addressing fertility has really overall kept those insects at bay. Not perfect. If I'm looking here, see, I thought I saw some damage. From where I'm standing, I don't see any. But, there's always a few flea beetles. Oh, I actually saw a flea beetle walking on a leaf. So it's not that we don't have them. they're just under control where they're not causing damage that makes the arugula unsellable. So again, fertility and flea beetles is really the two things. We don't have that much of a problem with disease as long as we're managing fertility. So fertility seems to take care of any disease that we do have on arugula. Third thing I will say is weeds. So the one thing about arugula is I used to do a jank seeder, and now and then I'll still use it to direct seed it, which is the most fast and most efficient way to plant it. But what happens is that we do have Netafim misters and even drip tape, but just on the just kind of walking and whatever crop management we're doing, the underside of these leaves tend to get just dirty. I found that we wash arugula, spin it dry, the shelf life just isn't as long. So I have a general practice where if I can grow a clean crop that does not require to be washed or rinsed or spun dry, it's going to give me a much longer shelf life. Again, anytime you handle a crop, not only is it reducing shelf life, but it's taking a lot more time in post-harvest. So I want to have as clean of a crop as I can that does not require to be washed. I don't advertise my greens as washed, ready to eat, even though they technically are. Like, my family will eat the stuff right out of the field, but we don't advertise that because technically that's not really true. But for the most part, as long as the crop is clean, we're not going to wash it. As you notice here, I am growing in fabric, which is a very unusual way to grow arugula. But I can get, 80 to 100 pounds per bed on average. In peak summer, say end of July, August, it's a bit less, but we get really good high yields. The crop is clean, and I just found a more even germination. We start our plants in the greenhouse, and there's just seems to be a lot less error with this system. Anytime that I can use fabric in the farm, just overall, I've just always find a higher quality product. It keeps the soil moisture more consistent. There's a lot less evaporation, and it keeps the surface of the soil cooler. So there's a lot more earthworm and microbe activity near the surface of the soil. The root system is fairly shallow, and so I want to have as much microbe nutrient cycling as possible closer to the surface of the soil. And I can achieve that by keeping the soil cool. In the summertime, I've measured the surface of our bare soil to 143 degrees before. So there's not much living near the surface of that soil at that temperature. But if I use fabric, then I can drop down the surface of that soil to about 85 degrees. So overall, I've just found that growing arugula on fabric, we just get a much higher, consistent quality product week after week, no matter how hot it is. It does take more time, but I can easily make up for that extra time of planting with my increased yields from our arugula sales. So that's my preference. Again, it does take more time to do it this way, but I am really, really happy with the results of growing arugula on fabric. When it comes to the variety, probably the maybe not the most important thing, but varieties on all vegetables is really important. I personally like growing Esme. It's more of a serrated arugula leaf. I've grown Astro before, which is more of a kind of a solid lobed leaf, and I've just found that those leaves tend to kind of stick together and there's not as much loft. Where this serrated arugula leaf, especially chefs really love the serrated leaves, especially if they're really into plating arugula for their dishes. They like the serrated Esme versus the one lobe leaf Astro. That's really just a personal preference when it comes to sales and marketing that I personally like. The flavor's the same. The yield, I've tested side by side. The yield is almost identical. So with that being said, if I feel like if the yield is the same, but the leaf is prettier, chefs like it, my customers like it, then that's what I'm going to go with. But other than that, we are seeding, we're planting this every week because we want to harvest every single week. And so the kind of secret to really boosting up your annual arugula sales is consistency. And you're going to get sick of me saying this in the future, but everything we do is really about setting up our system where we can have a consistent harvest, which gives us a consistent sale each week. And we just work our way backwards. We have certain days of the week that we seed in the greenhouse, certain days of the week that we prep our beds, certain days of the week that we transplant. And having that set in stone schedule just helps with the overall consistent sales for arugula for us. And the more we can have this crop consistently for our markets, people come to know, to rely that no matter what, we're gonna have arugula. I'll add one last thing. It's not the least important thing, but I only grow arugula under protected coverings. So in here, we're in a Farmer's Friend cat tunnel, whether or not you use a high tunnel, something that protects the crop from really heavy rains. Like we just had about almost three solid days of rain this past week. Because of how heavy it was, we would have probably have seen some damage. Also, that rain makes it really difficult for us to harvest because I like to harvest arugula dry. So if we have on a schedule to harvest arugula on a Wednesday, but it's raining all day, that's going to be a real problem in our weekly schedule. So growing in a tunnel, especially for arugula, has been really important for maintaining high quality, consistent product that we can sell week after week. All right, well, if you guys have enjoyed this video, let me know. If there's anything else that you guys want me to cover or talk about in the future videos, reply down below in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.